Are the Grammy nominations this year going to be all dominated by Lady Gaga, or is she going to be usurped by Kendrick Lamar or Bad Bunny, or some other random names that might pop up in the mix when the Grammy nominations drop this Friday? We are very close to Grammy time, so I thought that this would be the perfect moment to go through my final predictions for the major categories for the Grammys 2026 and also the pop categories. I am Sam, also known as Pop Sam Cam, and you are listening to the Pop Pod. Before we get started, if you like this podcast, I would love it if you would follow and subscribe so that you get all the episodes sent straight to your phone or wherever you listen to it. If you could also rate it 5 stars if you're enjoying it, I would really appreciate that. Also, I will drop the Discord link down below so that you can come and join that as well, because I'm sure there will be some action in there on Friday when the Grammy nominations are finally announced. It feels like we've been talking about this for ages, actually, but the moment has finally arrived and we are going to find out all on Friday. I mean, I think it's been pretty clear from the beginning, or at least since Lady Gaga dropped her record Mayhem, that the main contenders were going to be Bad Bunny, Kendrick Lamar, and Lady Gaga. That's how I'm seeing it at the moment. But I do think there are a couple of names in the mix that could come and take that away from them potentially. I'm not going to tell you who I think is going to win the categories just yet, because I will save that for once the nominations finally do drop. But I'm excited to get into these nominations. And it was actually quite fun going through all this because I got to relive the records that have been big over the past couple years, and also think about some of the new artists, because I think that they have been major this year. And actually looking at the list that I have for Best New Artist, it's really exciting and one of the strongest new artist categories that we have had in a little while. These are, just to preface, not my personal picks of who I want nominated, but who I think is going to get nominated. If it was just purely based on my opinion, and hopefully one day it will be, if the Grammys do let me in as a voter, please, it would look very different. But for now, this is what I think that it is going to look like. I would love it if you would join the comments and let me know what you think the nominations are going to look like once they drop. Just a heads up as well, if you are listening to this on Spotify, we've had a couple of issues with putting music into the episode in terms of copyright. We're trying to work it out as soon as we can. But for now, this episode is going to be without music, but there will be lots of talking. So if you don't like the sound of my voice, now's not the best time to listen. However, if you do, let's get into the nomination predictions. I feel like we should start with the pop categories, and then we are going to get into Album of the Year, Song of the Year, Record of the Year, and Best New Artist. Let's begin with Best Pop Vocal Album. I think that it's been a relatively strong year for pop music, although I think last year's, or this year's Grammys, I guess, had the stronger sort of field when it came to that. Obviously, we had Taylor, Ariana, and then we also had the Sabrina Carpenter and Chapel records as well. It was just like a really big pull for that year. I don't think it's been the same this year. It's going to be hard to figure out which way this one is going to fall, but let's start. The obvious one for this is Lady Gaga, Mayhem. If she doesn't get nominated for Best Pop Vocal Album, the whole Grammys campaign falls apart and she's not going to get nominated for anything, because this category is a sure bet for her. I cannot see any way that this doesn't happen, and I also really hope that it does happen. The next one I've got is probably less certain, but I hope that it does happen. Addison Rae, Addison. I think that this has been one of the breakthrough pop records of the year. She debuted within the top 5 of the Billboard 200. It is completely made by women, which I think should make a strong case for this being in here. It's crazy that it is like, that we're talking about it as if this is like a rare thing, because I hope in years to come it will not be a rare thing. But for now, it is quite interesting to see 3 women making the record, and I really like that story. Sabrina Carpenter's Man's Best Friend, another one like Gaga. I really just don't see this being snubbed. She was nominated for Best Pop Vocal Album last year when she did Short and Sweet. It sounds so like so nothing to say when she did it. When she won for Best Pop Vocal Album. So I really think that this is going to be in there. The next one is Justin Bieber's Swag. The Grammys has sometimes been really on Justin Bieber's side and sometimes not. So it's hard to say where this is going to fall. But Swag has been pretty well critically received if you don't count Swag 2, which is not going to be nominated for this. I think that it's just the original Swag. It's also had a hit in Daisies. It fetched great first week numbers for him as well. So I feel like this could be a nomination in here. The final one I'm iffy about, but Miley Cyrus is Something Beautiful. She obviously got plenty of nominations for her album Endless Summer Vacation. Flowers took home Record of the Year. It was just such a major moment for her, but Something Beautiful hasn't fetched the same commercial acclaim. So I'm wondering if that's going to be a little difficult for her. What I do think is on her side, it was critically well received. And I feel like Miley Cyrus still has a pretty good name within the pop community at the moment, just because of how much good favor or goodwill she generated with Endless Summer Vacation, even though I think that Something Beautiful is a much better record than that. So they're the 5 that I think are going to be nominated in here. I think that there's also a chance that we could see names like Alex Warren and Benson Boone make it in here. Also Somber, I think, could be in with a chance for Pop Vocal Album. We're just going to have to wait and see how it falls. But they're my 5. Let's move on to the Dance Pop category. This one's interesting. It's a relatively new category. And we've seen some of the more interesting pop releases find their way into this over the last couple years. It was won this year by Charli XCX's Von Dutch, which I think was a very obvious choice to win. I also think there's a very obvious winner in here this year. But let's get into it. The first one I think nominated is Tate McRae's Just Keep Watching. This was a pretty big hit for her. I think that this category kind of defines Tate McRae's whole thing pretty well. It was attached to a major movie. I would like to see Tate get nominated for something, and I do think if it's going to happen, it's probably going to be in this category for Just Keep Watching. Next one is Lady Gaga's Abracadabra. I was really interested to see whether she was going to put this in pop vocal performance or whether she was going to resign it to dance pop. I think that is a very clever move that she's put it in here, because while the pop vocal performance category is quite strong, I think that this one is a much easier win for her. And honestly, at this point seems like almost a lock for a win. I know I didn't say it. I know I said I wasn't going to say winners, but I do think that this one is kind of on lock for her to win. Next one is Disco Lions and Tinashe No Broke Boys. This category isn't for remixes. However, this is billed as Disco Lions and Tinashe, and there's no in parentheses remix on the end of No Broke Boys, which I think makes it eligible. Disco Lions' first big hit, another hit for Tinashe after she did really well with Nasty. I think Nasty was kind of snubbed at the Grammys last year, but I do think that this has more of a like commercial safe sound. So I can see this one being nominated here. The next one is Pink Pantheress Illegal. I would love to see her nominated for something. I think that Fancy That has been such a breakthrough moment for her. Maybe not as commercially as her last record with, why am I blanking on the Ice Spice song? Boy's a Liar. It came to me. I'm sorry, I'm recording this at like almost 7 p.m. at night, so my brain is starting to go a little bit, but Illegal has been a pretty good hit for her. It hasn't been like a Billboard hit or anything, but it did generate some viral hype on TikTok and is streaming pretty well. I feel like if she's going to get a nomination this year, this is the category where it's going to happen. And finally, Blackpink Jump. I'm not certain on this, but the Grammys has been a bit up and down with K-pop over the years. I feel like they can't ignore it for much longer. And Blackpink have just been such a massive act this year, even though they only released one song. But all the solo members having their moment and arguably having a bigger moment in in Western markets, like in terms of Billboard charting, than what Blackpink did. I feel like it could give Jump some platform to be in this category and would love to see it happen. So that's the best dance pop recording category. Let's move on to best pop duo slash group performance. This is a really random selection of songs, I have to say. And this category does often end up being quite random. It's interesting that it even exists to me. I think that it's basically just there to award like Coldplay. But last year, there was such an obvious winner in Bruno and Gaga's Die With a Smile. I think that that was a deserved win. I don't think there's an as obvious a winner this year, but there are a couple of really strong contenders. Rosé and Bruno Mars Apathy. This was one of the biggest records of the year. The Grammys loves Bruno Mars. Anything he's attached to, they will pop him in the nominations, and he won it with Gaga this year. So I don't think it's a stretch to say that this could win. I certainly don't think it's a stretch to say that it's going to be nominated. So I really feel like this could happen for Apathy. The next one is Ariana Grande and Cynthia Erivo with Defying Gravity from the Wicked soundtrack. The Wicked movie last year was absolutely massive. This one has been submitted in this category. It had such a moment. Obviously didn't chart like super high and kill the charts, but Defying Gravity is not an original song by these two. Obviously it was already in the Wicked musical, but their vocal performance in this is pretty spectacular. And particularly that like Cynthia Erivo vocal riff as well has been such a viral moment for them too. So I feel like this could be in with a nomination here. And I think the Wicked soundtrack has to be recognized in some kind of way as well. Hunter X, obviously K-pop Demon Hunters with Golden, a #1 record, a huge song. I'm still iffy about whether it's going to find its way into record and song of the year because it has kind of obviously like a juvenile attachment, given that it is part of like a quote unquote kids cartoon Netflix moment, but they can't completely ignore it and snub it. So I feel like it is going to find its way into the pop duo slash group category. Next one, going like completely different than Hunter X, is Elton John and Brandi Carlile with Who Believes in Angels. They released an album of the same name. Brandi Carlile in particular is just like absolute Grammys. What's the word that you would use? If the Grammys were birds, she would be the bird seed. They will come to her for every project and deliver her with Grammy nominations. Obviously, Elton John as well has taken home plenty of Grammys in the past and has had nominations as well. The fact that they're combining their forces, I feel like means they are going to have a big moment at the Grammys, at least in the Grammy nominations. Maybe I don't see so many wins, but I do see the nominations coming to them. And I do see it happening in this category in particular. Let's go to a whole nother side once again. SZA and Kendrick Lamar, 30 for 30. SZA and Kendrick, interestingly, submitted Luther in the rap categories and then submitted 30 for 30 in the pop categories. I think that's because this is technically a SZA record, whereas the Kendrick one is technically a Kendrick record. I personally think that Luther is way more pop than 30 for 30, but I think within the melodic rap and I don't know, what are they sung rap categories? There's a reason I'm not covering them here because I'm not as familiar in the rap categories. But I think that this fits more there and Luther fits more here, but whatever. They've obviously both had really good years, and I think that this could be a strong contender in this category. It was a pretty mild hit, one of the bigger hits off the Lana SOS Deluxe for SZA. SZA is beloved by the Grammys, even though I don't think that she's won enough. Kendrick is extremely beloved by the Grammys. He won Not Like Us, record and song of the year last year. So I feel like they're going to get nominated here. Best pop vocal performance. This is going to be an interesting one. I actually need to look up the definition of best pop vocal performance because I want to tell you exactly what it is, because it's not purely based on the song. Stay with me for 1 second. Okay. It combines technical skill with emotional... that is reading out the AI one that has nothing to do with the Grammys. Let's read out this. It's being designed for a solo performance pop recording and is limited to singles or tracks only. We knew that. Technically, it's kind of defined to say that it should go specifically to vocal performance. But if you look at the winners, you would expect that to go to something that's like really ballad heavy and like giving an absolutely like unbelievable vocal performance. If you look at the winners, it's not really that at all. Sabrina Carpenter won last year for Espresso. Harry Styles has won for Watermelon Sugar. Lizzo's won for Truth Hurts. So I really just think it's going to like one of the biggest pop tracks of that year. So let's talk about who I think is going to get nominated. I think that Justin Bieber, Daisies. This is where I feel like he's going to be in it. It's a huge top 5 record on the Billboard Hot 100. I feel like it's a really, really strong track. Daisies is one of my favorite songs of the year. I hope to see it in this category. Flicking to last year's winner, which was Sabrina Carpenter with Man-Child. Man-Child is an incredible record in my opinion, even though I don't think that it's dominated the cultural zeitgeist in the same way that Espresso has. It was a #1 record and is probably, I would say, the biggest pop track of the year if you want to go with pop being defined as capital P pop. So I feel like that one is really going to be in here. The next one I think is Raven Lenae's Love Me Not. Love Me Not was huge. It was her first top 10 record on the Billboard Hot 100. And also, if we think of the Grammys voters as sometimes being a little bit more traditional, Love Me Not has this kind of Motown flavor that I think is going to bode well for her when it comes to voting time, because I do think that it has a retro feel that's very easy to get into. Even though at large, Raven Lenae's music like errs on the side of like more experimental R&B, this is one of her more traditional records. And also it's just dripping with melody. So I would love to see that get a nomination here. And I think that it really could. Moving on to Chappell Roan's The Subway. The Subway has been a relatively big record for her. It was a top 10 record. I don't think that it's had longevity, but I think that Chappell Roan's name with Grammy voters is big enough for this to be recognized. I think that The Giver is going to be bypassed, but I think that The Subway is going to be the one that ends up getting nominations. Her performance vocally on this is absolutely spectacular if you want to award that. And it's actually potentially a win in this category as well. Once again, I said that I wouldn't say who I think is going to win, but it's just too tempting. The final one is Billie Eilish's Wildflower. For people asking me questions about how this is nominated, it wasn't submitted for the Grammys when Hit Me Hard and Soft was submitted, which means that it is eligible to be submitted this year. So however you think about that, whether it's fair, unfair, whatever, I think the Wildflower is a great record and has also spent so long on the charts. I do think that in this category last year, Birds of a Feather was snubbed, in my opinion. It was nominated, but it didn't win. I think that Birds of a Feather deserve to win something. So if that didn't happen, I think the Wildflower deserves to get some wins. Let's move on to the main categories: Album of the Year, Record of the Year, Song of the Year, and Best New Artist. I've been talking about these categories quite a lot, and they have moved around somewhat from when I first started talking about them. Obviously, we had some late contenders with Sabrina dropping her record late. I think also there's been some late contenders in terms of hits that have emerged in the past like couple months that could change things around. And honestly, particularly with Record of the Year, I actually had quite a lot of trouble doing it because there were a lot of records just on the fringe that I felt like could get a nomination that I wasn't quite sure about. But I'm happy with my choices. I've thrown in a few wild cards because I think that keeps it a little bit interesting. Let's start with Best New Artist because this is a category that I am quite excited about and interested about as well. The first artist that I've got in here is Lola Young. Obviously, Lola Young has had an unfortunate couple of months off the back of the release of her new album. I hope that this doesn't affect her Grammys chances because I still think that Messy is such a good record. I actually think the new album is really good as well. And I would really like to see her get recognized in this because she genuinely has been one of the most enthralling new artists to watch. I think that her live performances have been spectacular ever since Messy blew up. I think that she's had some great records since Messy as well, with things like Dealer and Spiders as well. So I really hope that her kind of absence from the pop world in the last month doesn't affect her chances when it comes to this. The next one is another one that I brought up in Best Pop Vocal Album, Addison Rae. I am pretty sure about this one. And I might be wrong, but I'm really hoping that she gets her moment here. As I said, the album did well critically and commercially. I also just think that her whole aesthetic has been so tight. And I think that Best New Artist should recognize an artist who has arrived on the scene, had their breakthrough, and feels kind of fully formed in some way. The artists that it's gone to over the past couple years have certainly felt like that, with Victoria Monet and Chappell Roan taking it home. So I think that Addison is more deserving is more than deserving of a nod in this category. Somber is the next one that I've got here. I have talked at length about the year that Somber has had. The record, the debut album, I think was really, really good. Have loved watching the success of Back to Friends, but also Undressed and 12 to 12, all happening at the same time. And there's very few artists that we are mentioning in this whole podcast who have had 3 songs popping off at the same time. I think that he's kind of a name that's on the tip of everybody's tongues right now. So I feel like a nomination is more than warranted here. The next one who has kind of blown up at the same time that Somber has is Alex Warren, but potentially even more so, even if it is just with the one record, Ordinary, a #1 single. And I think when you have that kind of success, for the Grammys to ignore him right now, it would be purposeful because he is really in the zeitgeist. I think Ordinary is one of those rare songs that has managed to be ubiquitous and find the center of pop this year. And even though I don't personally find him one of the most exciting artists nominated in this category, I do think given how he has dominated the charts, it would be very deserved. Megan Moroney is the next one that I've got. She is a country artist who is doing really, really well. She had a record this year that did well. I think that they often tend to at least nominate a country artist in this category, even though they don't always have the best track record with taking home the award. But her album, Am I Okay, did incredibly well. The title track has over 100 million streams. No Caller ID also does. And I think she's dominated country more than any other artist or new artist this year. She actually does have a few albums. She had Lucky as well, but this has really been her breakthrough and she is eligible to be nominated in this category. So I'm putting her in. Next one is a name that I actually didn't have the first time that I talked about this category. I had that whole Best New Artist episode where I talked in length about them. And since I recorded that episode, things have changed quite dramatically for Olivia Dean. Olivia Dean released her album, The Art of Loving. That album is not eligible for Grammy nominations this year, but it will be next year. And I think we can talk about how that's kind of a lock for things like Album of the Year then. But she is eligible for Best New Artist because Best New Artist doesn't have to necessarily be tied to a project. It's more to do with when you blew up. I would argue that she kind of blew up in the next Grammy cycle, but whatever, however you want to put it, she's going to be a massively strong contender this year, given that now she has several singles dominating the charts. Man I Need is a top 10 record. And even though that's not technically going to be nominated here, I don't think that people are going to be able to get Olivia Dean out of their heads, particularly given that she has submitted here. I'm actually going to look up what else she's submitted for because there's not too many records that she would be able to pull from within this period. Maybe there is the okay, let's see. I think she's just submitted for Best New Artist, which is interesting. Okay, just Best New Artist. I think that she could be a real contender here. The Marias is the next one. The Marias, I believe, have submitted before in this category, but this year has really been their blow up. No One Noticed, obviously a massive charting song, big viral moment. I also think their stage show is really helping right now. I think it's completely arresting. It looks beautiful. Maria, the lead singer of the band, is a really competent lead for it, and she's been really good at giving interviews this year. Their Tiny Desk was really good. Just so many things lining up to give them this moment in here. And I also think that it's nice amongst a bunch of solo acts for a band to be recognized in here. Finally, I have Raven Lenae. I'm pretty sure of this nomination, and I would be honestly shocked if it didn't happen. Birdseye was it was submitted for this year's awards, but she obviously didn't get a Best New Artist nomination because the blow up has happened since, so she ends up in this category. It's the same kind of, I don't know, whatever you want to call it, administrative like loopholes that she's going through to get Love Me Not nominated as well, because that wasn't submitted last year. Anyway, all this to say, she is absolutely deserving of the nomination. One of my favorite artists, and I've just absolutely loved seeing her blow up. Her stage show as well is incredible. She just has a beautiful presence and a great demeanor as an artist. I really hope that she gets recognized in this category, and I think that she will. Let's move on to Song of the Year. This is, if you want a quick primer on what's the difference between Record of the Year and Song of the Year, Song of the Year nominates the songwriters. So say that you've got 3 songwriters on a song and the artist did not write on it, they will technically not be awarded for it. Whereas Record of the Year awards it to the package. So the artist will get the nomination. If that makes sense to you, I can go in more depth in it. If you want it, drop it in the comments and maybe I can do a TikTok video on it. But songwriting awards, Song of the Year awards songwriting, Record of the Year technically awards the whole package, production included. It really ends up being a very similar pool of nominations, to be honest. So I'm not even sure the Grammy nominations, the Grammy nominators particularly know the difference between the two. But basically what it means is more ballads end up in Song of the Year and more kind of rap/dance pop songs end up in Record of the Year. Let's talk about Song of the Year. Lady Gaga, Abracadabra. I expect her to be nominated in all of the main categories, and I really don't want to go too much into depth about this because I really just don't see her being snubbed. I would be shocked. It's one of the top 10 pop records of the year for sure, based on streams, but also based on critical appraisal. Let's move on to the next one, Sabrina Carpenter, Manchild. She was nominated last year in Song of the Year for Please, Please, Please. Manchild is a very different song, but it is her and Jack Antonoff, and I think that the Grammys is going to really like that combination in the same way that they liked that with Please, Please, Please and nominated that. So I see that happening here. Kendrick Lamar and SZA with Luther. Kendrick took home this award this year for Not Like Us. I really think that the songwriting on this song in particular is beautiful. I think that SZA's hook is undeniable, and Kendrick's work, like on the more melodic side of rap, is also really impressive. It was a #1 record. Can't see it not getting nominated. Bad Bunny, DTMF. He has actually submitted a different song for Record of the Year, and I think this is quite smart because I think that DTMF, the songwriting is what's really impressive in this one. Obviously, the tone of the song being about how he wishes he should have taken more photos, and it's got this really nostalgic base to it. But then also melodically, that hook is just undeniable, and TikTok obviously took it and ran with it immediately. I don't think that it's a lock because I'm still waiting to see how the Grammys is going to treat Bad Bunny, given that they have snubbed him a lot in the past. But if they do the right thing and do start awarding him, I think that this song will be in it. Billie Eilish, Wildflower. Billie Eilish is kind of a favorite in the songwriting category. She has taken it home once before with the Barbie song, What Was I Made For? I actually think she's taken it home multiple times. Just bear with me while I look this up. I'm sorry that I'm kind of doing this on the fly, but It's fun. You're getting an insight into how my brain works. She won for the Barbie song, What Was I Made For? She also won for Bad Guy in 2020. So she has won it twice before, and I think that a third could be inside. I was really expecting the win for Birds of a Feather here. This year, that obviously didn't happen. Wildflower potentially has more of like a traditionalist vibe to it in that it is a slower tempo. It is a little bit more melancholic. Maybe they will gravitate to that more like how they did with the Barbie song. But I certainly think that a nomination is going to happen. Chapel Row in the Subway. This is a beautifully written song. It's Dan Nigro and Chapel both writing it. They've obviously they obviously gave Chapel Roan a nomination last year in this for, I'm trying to remind myself of what they, sorry, I take that back. They didn't give her a nomination last year, which is very interesting, actually. They did. Good Luck Babe got a nomination. The wheels have fallen off now. Good Luck Babe got a nomination. I can't see the Subway missing it. As I said, it was a top 10 record, but it's also just so well written, so vivid. I actually think that it's one of the best songs that Chapel has ever written, and I would really like to see it nominated here. I don't think that it's enough to like 100% lock it in, but I'm pretty sure about it. Next, Raven Lenae's Love Me Not. This, again, as I said, has this kind of vintage Motown feel to it, which I think could really get on favor some of the younger voters who are really intrigued by Raven Lenae's presence in like the R&B space, but also get some of the more traditionalists who tend to like edge towards the people like the Beatles and Elton John who've been nominated in previous years for kind of odd records. I feel like it could satisfy both sides of the pool and would love to see it nominated. Finally, Justin Bieber, Daisies. If any record for him has been his quote-unquote songwriting record, it's this one. I think that the production just lends itself to highlighting the songwriting. He wrote the record, swag in general, with everybody from like Eddie Benjamin, and also obviously McGee's on there as well. And then you've got like Carter Lang, who's been working with SZA, and you've also got Dijon too. It's just a really cool collection of songwriters. I know that they're all not on Daisies, but I think that it all kind of merges into one when it comes to the voting like pool, and they end up just awarding the record that is the almost billboard for that record. So Justin Bieber, Daisies. I think we'll get a nomination here. Let's move on to Record of the Year. We have some ones that are like very similar to Song of the Year. So I'm just going to move through those ones quickly. I think the overlap will be Gaga with Abracadabra, just like brilliantly produced song. Sabrina Carpenter, Manchild. Kendrick Lamar and SZA with Luther, and then also Billie Eilish with Wildflower. They are my overlap. The 4 next records that I have are ones that I think the production really stands up, maybe even more so than the songwriting. And I think that's why they would end up in Record of the Year and not Song of the Year. The first one is Bad Bunny with Baila Inolvidable. I think that the production on this one is incredible. There's obviously a real beat switch up. There is so much highlighted in the song in terms of like traditional Puerto Rican styles. I think that his vocal performance is phenomenal, and I would love to see this get a nod too. It's also been just like a streaming juggernaut. Next one is Rose and Bruno Mars, Apathy. As I said, such a big pop record, but also one that I wouldn't say is going to fall in the songwriting category. Maybe it will, but more so I think that this song is about the performance, the charisma, the chemistry between Rose and Bruno Mars. The fact that Bruno Mars is on the song full stop will be enough to get it a nomination, but I also think it deserves to get a nomination. I think that it's a great pop song. Next up, I have Somba, Back to Friends. I'm not certain about this because I feel like maybe he could fall in amongst more traditional voters on the TikTok artist side of things. I think that's an unfair definition to give him. I think you need to look at this song for what it is, which is like a real rare zeitgeist pop moment. It is like an example of a Gen Z artist just really like pulling from so many different pools of inspiration. I hear everything from like the Strokes to the Beach Boys pulling so much in. And that's why I think that maybe that will be enough to ignite obviously the young voters who I think are going to be very on his side, but also the more traditional voters as well. Would love to see it happen. I think that is such a moment for him. The final one is one that I'm not 100% sure on, but I don't think that the Grammys reunited with The Weeknd earlier this year and made such a big deal about it for them not to recognize him in the main categories. Like, I just feel like even though Timeless hasn't been one of the biggest records of the year, even though it's streamed incredibly well, I do think that they are going to want to like pay him some, I guess, reparations for not rewarding Blinding Lights. It's still crazy to me that that record was not nominated for Record of the Year. So if nominating Timeless is going to smooth that over somewhat, so be it. It's not my favorite one, but I do think that it has been quite big and I can see it getting a nomination here. Let's move on to the big one, which is Album of the Year. This is a pretty tough category. I think there are some obvious ones and then there are some fringe ones as well. I'm interested to know which way they're going to fall on a couple of albums. And there's a few that maybe missed my predictions that I do still think could get a nod. But let's start with Bad Bunny. This is one that I'm not 100% certain on, but I'm like 80% certain on. I think that this album is definitely one of the albums, if not the album of the year. I think that it is unbelievable. They obviously gave him a nomination in the Album of the Year category last for Un Verano Sin Ti. I think that that was very deserved. But I do think that this one is potentially even more deserved and has actually garnered so much attention. I was actually just reading that the voters of the Latin Grammys will now be voting in these Grammys as well, which could help his chances a lot. And I just think that it makes sense for Latin music to be talked about within this category and noted because it has had such a large impact on commercial music over the past, I mean, you can say 10 years, but you can go even further back than that. But Bad Bunny has been one of the main players in that, so he definitely deserves a nomination. Lady Gaga, Mayhem. This is absolutely deserved. This has been such a return for her, such a renaissance for her as well, and has really just put her back in the zeitgeist while also celebrating everything that she's done in the past. She has never won Album of the Year before. We obviously saw what happened with Beyonce earlier in the year, taking home Cowboy Carter after several Album of the Year nominations and missing out on them. I do think that that could happen for Gaga this year, where this could finally be her moment. A lot of people are predicting that it will be her moment, but a nomination is surely a lock. And the same thing can actually be said for Kendrick Lamar with GNX. Kendrick Lamar has lost Album of the Year many times. I think that he's deserved it many times, but GNX was a moment for him off the back of Not Like Us, which, once again, to reiterate, one record on the Song of the Year this year. GNX really was his moment. He played the Super Bowl. Luther's been a massive song off it. I think tracks like Squabble Up have also been huge as well. Just like really put him back in the zeitgeist in a way that Mr. Morale didn't. And so I think that it's really going to be Lady Gaga and Kendrick Lamar playing off each other for this category. But that doesn't mean there aren't some strong players still in here. One of them being Elton John and Brandi Carlile with Who Believes in Angels. As I said before, these two are kind of loved by the Grammys. Maybe Brandi even more so than Elton. In the past, at least 5 years to a decade, her projects have always been nominated. She has shown up for the tributes, for the performances. She's just really like being good to the Grammys, and the Grammys have been good to her. And teaming up with a legend like Elton John is surely the kind of fodder that the Grammys is absolutely going to love. So even though it's not my personal choice for Album of the Year, I really do think it's going to get a nomination. Sabrina Carpenter, Man's Best Friend. Not as successful as Short and Sweet, I would say, but Short and Sweet was such a juggernaut. And in the context of pop music in general this year, Man's Best Friend has probably been one of, if not the biggest. It's certainly been a really strong record for me that I've returned to so many times. I cannot see them snubbing her here, and I would be very surprised if they did. Tyler, the Creator, Chromacopia. Okay, so this is a really interesting one because Tyler, the Creator, has taken home Best Rap Album for the past two records that he's released, Call Me When You Get Lost and also Igor. But he's never taken home Album of the Year. He has also never been nominated for Album of the Year, which I think is absolutely crazy. But we've seen him just like take over in the past couple years. He's been on this massive arena tour for Chromacopia. He's a festival headliner in his own right. Chromacopia had hits like Sticky. It was also critically well received. It did incredible numbers in the first week. And it's just continued this trajectory for Tyler where he just gets bigger and bigger with every record. He also had a second record, Don't Tap the Glass, which is not submitted in this category, which I think is clever, given that they don't want to take the shine away from Chromacopia. But I think was also critically well received, also has a hit in Sugar on My Tongue. I think that it's all going to help when it comes to nominations. And Chromacopia, I really have my fingers crossed for this one. Then I have Leve with A Matter of Time. Leve, with A Matter of Time. She is, I'm not certain about this, but I do think that she has had enough of kind of a commercial moment with this record to be in the conversation here. And she is also obviously a traditionalist in the way that she has these jazz influences and classical influences that go into her work. And I just really think that's going to find favor with Grammy voters. I just have this gut feeling that Leve is going to have her moment in the Album of the Year category. And if she gets nominated, I would not rule out her being a strong contender as well. In the same way that we've seen people like Norah Jones awarded in the past, I feel like that same kind of favor could land with Leve. My final prediction for Album of the Year is The Weeknd with Hurry Up Tomorrow. As I said, they made a big deal of him reuniting with the Grammys and then bearing the hatchet. And then he had that performance earlier in the year where he did actually perform songs off Hurry Up Tomorrow. Hurry Up Tomorrow, interestingly, I think is kind of the least successful album of the trilogy that started with After Hours and then had maybe Dawn FM was the least successful. Maybe just as a project, it's my least favorite of the three. However, you cannot deny that it had an incredible first week sales-wise, has had several hits, and we have this whole story arc of him bearing the hatchet with the Grammys. So I think that that is going to complete the 8. There are also so many outliers that could also slip in. We have Justin Bieber's record, Swag, which I think could fall into the category. We have Addison Rae's, we have Sombers, we even have Alex Warren's that could find itself in there. Tate McRae's So Close to What. A lot of people on my Instagram asking whether I think she's going to get a nomination. I do think that she's going to pick up a couple here and there maybe, but it's going to be a difficult run for her just because it's been a stronger year. There's also Lord's Virgin, which is a like kind of outsider chance to be nominated as well. We have the Rose record. I don't think Scissor's Lana can be nominated because I think that SOS is already nominated and it's technically a deluxe. There's a couple things that could fall in here, but they're the 8 that I think that is going to happen for Friday. We are going to find out what the actual nominations are. Once we have them next week, I will come back on the Pop Pod and we will talk about them at length. Again, obviously there'll be some surprises, some snubs, everything in between. Maybe I'll drop a bonus Pop Pod episode over the weekend after we have those nominations. Interested to know what your thoughts are though. Drop them in the comments. Thank you so much for joining me for the Pop Pod, and I will see you once we actually have the real list. See you later.